What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another DevPro duel video in Ranked, and this time I'm going to be playing with the Blue Eyes deck yet again. This time it is going to be against some Monarch matchups. Now basically, I took the deck that I was playing in the last video. I basically just kind of took it down to a fundamental level and like just streamlined the hell out of it because I was noticing some problems I was having when I was just like slogging through Ranked for literally hours and hours on end of taking losses and wins based off different factors. And so what you see is, you see my refined deck list on screen. Now I have gotten some suggestions and deck lists sent in by people to my Facebook fan page. I will definitely look at those, and I'll definitely probably use those for different videos. One specifically that I actually really liked the look of was a hieratic based build, and so that definitely potentially has some merit of playing there. But anyway, as you can see, the deck is just a lot more streamlined than it was in the previous video. I cut out a lot of the gimmicky cards like Cat Sith and Master and stuff like that. Literally just a very, very streamlined game plan, and then utilizing more draw cards like trade-ins and cards of consonances to actually get things into play. Now there is the potential of me cutting like this warning, and maybe cutting a Silver's Cry for maybe like Swing of Memories later on. But as of right now, I'm kind of content with the way it's been working. Just in its preliminary testing before I started, trying to film games for this video and stuff like that. The extra deck I definitely haven't really paid a lot of attention to. This could probably just become something else, but I do like to steal games with this against certain matchups, so I mean, it's kind of whatever. Another card I've thought about playing is maybe one copy of the Blue Eyes Reborn spell. I think it's like Beacon of White in the TCG, the one that lets the Blue Eyes attack multiple times, because that was honestly one of my favorite cards testing this deck months ago, simply because, making Heliopolis, using your entire hand to clear their board, and then just following it up with that with a Blue Eyes that can attack 3 times is pretty neat. But otherwise, yeah, this deck is just incredibly streamlined. I'm going to be trying out some different ideas that you guys sent me in future videos, but as for right now, this is the build for this video, and I'm going to jump straight into the first game. So, first game, and I get to go first, and I open with a hand that's actually very good for molding my play string later, because it's just going to allow me to see a lot of potential options. So I summon Maiden and activate War Off Thou, and I search a White Stone of Legend because I have cards, consonants, and trade in my hand, and the White Stone will trigger to give me a Blue Eyes to work with the trade in. And I end up drawing a Blue Eyes off of the consonants itself, and I'm kind of displeased at this, but it ends up working out for the better because I actually draw another trade in off of the trade in, thus having both of them be live. And so I have another Wear Off Thou, and I use its ability to search for a Sage. So I'm going to be taking 4K at the end of the turn, but I'm not really too concerned about it because this deck just is very good about protecting its life once you actually have a field established. And so I use Sage on Maiden, trigger both effects, get Spirit Dragon out of my deck and get Blue Eyes out of my deck, and then go to overlay for a rank 8 into Titanic Galaxy. Still ending with 5 cards. My hand overall isn't that great at its current point, but it's very open for me to draw literally any of my like spell cards and just unbrick it. Like, I still have a trade-in left in the deck, I still have consonances left in the deck, I still have all the field spells left in the deck, I still have all my reborn cards like Soul Charge and Silver's Cry and all that left in the deck. I still have all of these potential options, and most of my monster lineup has been gone through in terms of me cycling through the cards. So he just sets 2 and passes in the face of the Titanic Galaxy, and I don't know what I'm playing against. I typically do go into most of these matches just blind because I am just playing around in Ranked, and I just film everything that I play and use the ones that are the right matchups of what I want. So I end up drawing cards of consonants, which is great. So I use consonants on Ancient Whitestone, and end up drawing another Ancient Whitestone and then a Sage. And so I use Sage's ability to add another Maiden to my hand just so I can have, potential there, because Maiden is a good standalone card in simplified game states, which is what I appear to be in. And not wanting to lose the Titanic Galaxy to a potential trap like a Stormy Mirror Force or something like that, I end up just ending my turn, going Ancient Whitestone into White Spirit Dragon and banishing a card on the board. And it ends up being a Pantheism that was set, so I know I'm playing as Monarchs, and it looks like he just took a little trip down to Brick City, where Pantheism was probably the only card that he could have used to unbrick his hand, and the Titanic Galaxy actually just made that not an option, because he would have been taking an inherent -1, discarding off of Pantheism, and then it would have gotten sucked up by Titanic Galaxy as an overlay material, so it could not have been used from grave. So the entire rest of his hand was just bricks that he could not use from there, and I end up just taking the game out of principle because my cards were allowed to be established first. Okay, so second game, ironically enough, playing against the same guy. That's kind of how the rated pool works when you go in for a couple hours and just film all your games that you play against Monarchs. So my hand is not the greatest. It's actually basically like a 2-card hand because Twin Twister isn't really a real card, even though it will potentially be useful if he sets some things like strikes or scoldings or anything like that if he plays them. But I have 2 vanillas in my hand, I have the White Stone, and I have a Where Art Thou. And he, on the other hand, gets to start off his turn with Pantheism, discarding Stormforth, drawing 2, and then banishing Pantheism, revealing triple return, of which I have to give him 1. So already it's not looking too great for me. My hand is very, very reliant and on what the 6th card I'm going to be drawing is, on whether or not it's going to be playable and good or not. But anyway, so he's normal summons his idea, gets an Eidos out of the deck, triggers its ability to give an additional tribute summon, and then he tributes it for his Super Quantum Red Layer, and then triggers the return to search an Either from his deck to his hand. So I know he has an Either in his hand, which, I mean, it's pretty much always, they almost always have Either on your turn, so I'm trying to figure out how to play through that and through and around it, and he sets a card and passes his turn. Now I draw Terraforming, which is very, very good, very critical for my game plan, but he shotguns the Monarchs Stormforth in my draw phase. I don't know if he was playing around Denko or something like that, but that's just 100% not the correct play, because I know you have Either, and now I know you have a Stormforth active on the board. That is way too much information for you to give a player that actually knows what they're doing and how to play around these things. That's way too much information for you to give them. I would have been perfectly fine committing to like a Spirit Dragon play and actually making Blue Eye Spirit Dragon and then like using it to dodge like a Karaz or something, but then you could have just got me with the Stormforth. Like, that's way too much information you've given me, because now I get to play around both cards and make my situation the best it could possibly be. So, I use Terraforming, get Mausoleum of White, and I summon my Ancient White Stone, and I activate Where Art Thou to search another level 1 that I'm perfectly intending to summon this turn. So I end up getting Maiden because Sage wouldn't do enough. I can't go Sage for Maiden and then normal summon the Maiden this turn because I've already used one of my 2 normal summons. So I just kind of consider my options a bit, remembering that he has the Stormforth and Aether up. I decide to commit to a mind game and see if it works. So I set my Twin Twister and I attempt to enter battle phase to make it look like I'm ending my turn, because Either can only be activated in my main phase. And so he responds to my mind game by doing exactly what I want him to do. And now I was honestly really worried that he was going to tribute like his red layer and actually summon the Either that way, thus tributing my stone and his red layer and getting Karaz out of his deck and popping my 2 cards. Now, yes, I would have been able to draw 2 cards, but unless those cards were stuff like Trade-In, Silver's Cry, or even just another Mausoleum in White, but even I've already used traditional normal summons, so even that wouldn't have been good. I would have been able to not get my normal summon for turn, and thus I wouldn't have been able to continue playing the game in as favorable of a position that I was currently in. But he ends up actually doing in a vacuum, the correct play, but in this situation, the incorrect play, or the not so optimal play, of tributing his idea and my stone. And he triggers return, searches Erebus, triggers idea, gets back a Pantheism, and then he also gets to summon another Aether out of his deck off of the first Aether. And so I summon my Maiden with my normal summon, trigger the field spell, target Maiden, trigger Maiden's effect, special summon Blue Eyes out of my deck, and then send a Blue Eyes from my deck to the grave. And so at this point, I'm just trying to figure out how to keep that Erebus from hurting me, because Erebus is one of the only cards in the game that does not give a shit about what Blue Eye Spirit Dragon or Azure Dragon do, because of the fact that it is non-targeting and it spins. And so that's a problem. So I have to try and keep the Erebus from happening at all costs. So I use my Blue Eyes that I summoned to attack over his Either that is tribute summoned, and the other one will go back to his hand in the end phase, and the red layer will stay on the board. And I'm okay with this board state. I've just got to figure out how to get things in my advantage. And so in the end phase, I trigger my White Stone, banish his return, and his Either will go back to his hand. And now the fact that I banish his return actually opens up the potential like win condition for me in this game, because it opens my opponent up to being able to use his extra deck, which potentially opens up a misplay on his end. So he starts his turn, he activates Eidos Engrave, to which I negate with Spirit Dragon. That's 100% the card I have to negate here, because if I don't, then Erebus is guaranteed to happen. I know he has it in his hand. And he chains to my Spirit Dragon negation with Prime Monarch, summoning it from grave. Now here is the part where this game goes from being completely, like, in my opinion, unwinnable at this point, because he could just summon Erebus right here. Right here, he could summon Erebus and just win the game, because I would not have a decent enough follow-up, because my hand is literal, like, 2 vanillas, which are meaningless. The field spell won't do anything unless I draw another, like, Sage or Maiden. Like, this is just very, very much a very losing situation for me. But it gets turned around by the fact that he overlays into Wind Up Arsenal Zenmayo, and he puts a lot of value into what my potential back row could be. So he overlays into Zenmayo, and he does not detach the trap. He detaches the red layer, and he set his own Pantheism and popped his Pantheism and my set Twin Twister. And then he activates Pantheism, revealing Stormforth double return. I give him return because even though he can't activate Stormforth this turn because he special summoned from extra deck, I don't want him to potentially have it set for his next turn because I know he has Aether in his hand. It just went there. And so since he doesn't have the trap engrave anymore either because he left it under the Zenmayo, he can't banish it and summon it during my turn. And so now his only way to summon Erebus during my own turn is if he has one of the small guys to summon. He has to have another Eidos or Idea in his hand. He has to have those cards. Otherwise, he cannot normal summon a monster and then normal summon Erebus. To which, he does not have any of them. So he just scoops because he realizes not only one but two very minor misplays that he made, but that ultimately just got me the win because of the fact that I negated his Eidos. Because of the fact that I negated his Eidos, and like he was scared of my set card, just made it to where he misplayed going into the Zenmayo, and thus not having the resources to drop Erebus, and he detached the wrong material from Zenmayo, which made it to where he couldn't either me during my own turn. Although the cards he could have ethered and Karaz would have been very, very limited, because of the fact that Azure Dragon would have been on the field, would have been protecting the Azure itself and one of my dragons. Like, it's still just the fact that he made those two very minor misplays just caused me to win the game, because at the end of the turn he's not going to be able to out anything on my board. I'm going to go into Azure Eyes, and then I'm going to get my Blue Eyes back next turn, and which I can just use those to potentially win the game with whatever card I draw. I could easily just close out the game next turn based off any card that I draw from here on then. But anyway, next game, I actually could not find enough ranked Monarch matches, strangely enough, even after being in ranked for a few hours trying to film them. So I ended up asking one of my friends to jump on and film some Monarch games with me. And it's a friend that I actually trust to play correctly and stuff of that nature. So I knew that it would be pretty decent and pretty alright to ask him to play with the deck. But anyway, so I get to go first, and I normal summon Maiden, and I activate Wear Off Thou, and I search Veiler, because I already have Sage. And so I know I'm just going to take 2,000 at the end of the turn anyway, and I wanted to form a defensive layer, because at this point I know that I'm trying to play against Monarchs. So basically I use Maiden and Sage, that combination of plays and cards, to actually go into Blue Eyes from the deck, and White Spirit Dragon off of the Sage as well. I special summon the Guardian of Order that I have in my hand, because I control 2 light monsters, and I overlay the Guardian of Order and the White Spirit Dragon into a Titanic Galaxy. So I've got Titanic Galaxy backed up by Veiler against Monarchs, and that's actually pretty decent. That's actually really decent, and my hand doesn't really have a lot of a follow-up play unless I get to keep that Blue Eyes on the board. And that's the reason I overlaid with the Guardian of Order, was so that I could normal summon the Ancient Whitestone next turn and potentially make Spirit Dragon. So that's the entire reasoning behind especially Guardian of Order as a free card out of my hand in that area. But he's playing Brilliant Monarchs. I think he's playing a build that got top 8 at like either a regional or like a foreign nationals or something. I'm not specifically sure what build he's playing, but he's playing a Brilliant Monarch deck list with extra deck. So I end up Titanic Galaxy, negating the Brilliant Fusion. He sets 3 and passes his turn, and then sets a monster, so it seems like he's bricked, essentially. It looks like he's just bricked like a rather large amount, considering that like he's already Chaos Trap Hold my Maiden, and the other 2 cards, they don't seem to be doing anything when I'm attacking. I was honestly expecting to lose like my Titanic Galaxy to some form of maybe Battle Trap or something, but I attack over a set with Blue Eyes and it ends up being a Gem-Knight Garnet, so I know he runs 2 at this point, so that because the Brilliant Fusion was legal to activate, so there is that, and he just drew one of them. So the Ancient Whitestone that I discard off Cards of Consonance triggers in the end phase, getting White Spirit Dragon. I banish another one of his back row, and it turns out to be a Monarch Stormforce. So that gives me even more information that the card in his hand is not something like an Aether. So now I just have to deal with whatever the back row might be. But he draws Idea and normal summons it, and I just put the Veiler on it. He knows I have the Veiler because I searched it off of Where Art Thou, and so at this point I'm pretty sure the game is very much sewed up. The Monarch matchup is very strange for the Blue Eyes deck against Domain Monarchs. Against Domain Monarchs, that their entire purpose is like being a simplified game state with Domain up, using Aethers on your turn all the time, all that sort of nonsense. The Blue Eyes deck actually kind of struggles just because of the interaction that Stormforth and Aether have on your field, as well as Karaz. But Against extra deck Monarchs, it seems like the way you want to deal with that deck is forcing that deck into a simplified game state, just because it doesn't play as effectively as Domain Monarchs does in that simplified game state, because it is trying to be an extra deck based strategy, and it has all these other cards in it as well that actually like are utilized for the extra deck methods, like with the quantums and all that. So it's really strange, because forcing the extra deck Monarch deck into a simplified game state seems to be the way to go if you're trying to beat that matchup, but against Domain Monarchs, being in a simplified game state actually hurts you a bit more, simply because of the fact that their entire deck is trying to force you into a simplified game state as well. But anyway, so next game, he gets to start, he gets to go first, and he plays Domain and then specials Red Layer, and I'm just got Maxi in my hand. I'm like, ah, damn it, this is terrible, and I'm going to be losing a card out of my hand, because he reveals off Domain, he reveals Erebus, lowering its level, tributes the Red Layer for Erebus, and then uses Erebus's ability to start setting up his grave and take a card out of my hand. Now, all of the cards in my hand aren't really that, like, consequential to lose. I'd honestly rather have lost the Max C, but he ends up hitting the Soul Charge. The Cards of Consonance, while it doesn't look live, it is live, because Terraforming can get Dragon Ravine, which can discard a card out of my hand to get Dragunic Corseska, and then I can use Cards of Consonance there. But he ends up sending Pantheism and the Prime Monarch to grave off of his Erebus, you know, standard-ish, and he reveals Pantheism Tenacity, and I'm like, alright, this is what's up. So he either has another Monarch spell and trap in his hand, and that's why he's trying to get Pantheism, or he has another Monarch in his hand, and that's why he's revealing Tenacity. The cards literally conflict against each other, so I'm like, alright, I'm going to give him Tenacity, because if he had revealed like double Tenacity and a Pantheism, I would have probably given him the Pantheism, but he revealed only one Tenacity and double Pantheism, which led me to believe that that he didn't have another Monarch in his hand, and so he adds the Tenacity, which I give him, and then he just sets a card and passes, and I'm like, alright, we were right. Now here I actually make a mistake in that I have an amazing play in the form of I could Terraform him for Dragon Ravine, discard Max C, send White Spirit Dragon to grave, and then I could Silver's Cry for the White Spirit Dragon back, right? I could get that back off of the Silver's Cry, banish his back row, and then I could make I could normal summon Valor and make White Spirit Dragon, and then be very far ahead in the game. But I accidentally click Light Mausoleum because I don't think about it. I literally think about it as I'm doing it, but I just quickly click the Light Mausoleum, and so it's salvageable simply because of the fact that Ancient Whitestone went into my graveyard this turn, so it specials a White Spirit Dragon out of my deck anyway, and thus I get to banish his back row anyway. But I would have much rather have ended my turn with White Spirit Dragon, but fortunately, he doesn't draw another card to make his Tenacity live. He has to draw a Monarch, because I know he has Tenacity in his hand at this point, because he set the Storm forth, and so thus, I know, I kind of have information on his hand, so we're in a very simplified game state at this point, and like I was saying previously, forcing extra deck Monarchs into a simplified game state seems to be, like, the ideal way for you to beat them, especially if you can end up with more cards than them, like I currently have. But anyway, so I use Silver's Cry to bring back the White Spirit Dragon and banish his field spell, and then I activate Light Mausoleum, and I send Blue Eyes from deck to grave, targeting Spirit Dragon to raise his attack to 33 to attack over his Erebus. And then in main phase 2, I normal summon the Valor, and then I make White Spirit Dragon so I can start actually getting my stuff back. And I have Spirit Dragon in grave again, so I just set my Silver's Cry and pass. I have double Max C in my hand, which sucks against Monarchs. At least this is the extra deck variant, and he does have a Prime in grave that he can make live at some point. But now I have Spirit Dragon up, he has an Erebus engraved that he can actually trigger to add back to his hand, but I get to negate that, and then I can use Max C on his Prime, trading it for another card, and I'm potentially in just a very good position. So he activates the Erebus, discarding the Tenacity, and I use Spirit Dragon to negate the Erebus, so it doesn't go back to his hand. I'm just trying to keep the game state as simple as possible from here, because of the fact that that is in my best interest. But he chains Prime, summons it, and I actually activate Max C, which draws me into another Ancient Whitestone, so that I'm able to actually start getting more cards out of my deck. I have another Tuner that I can use alongside Silver's Cry and Azure Eyes if I summon it this turn, making more level 9s and making a potential Rake in rank 8. My options for next turn are both very, very valid. But he ends up setting a card and passing his turn, so in his end phase I Silver's Cry for White Spirit Dragon, summon it, use its ability to banish his back row, and then it's a Chaos Trap Hole, so very, very good in that regard. And then I tribute the Spirit Dragon to get out Azure Eyes, and then Azure Eyes triggers in the standby phase, getting back Blue Eyes White Dragon. And so from here, I've got a normal summon on Ancient Whitestone that I can use. I can use Ancient Whitestone engraved to add a Blue Eyes back to my hand if I want to. There are quite a few different options I have. He's at 75, so I don't really see a way to kill him this turn with the with the cards that I do have access to in my hand. So I normal summon Ancient Whitestone. I've used my additional normal summon off the field spell to do this. It doesn't necessarily matter, but it does actually end up being relevant. But I can't think of a way to kill him. And I look at his grave. He doesn't have any Monarch spells and traps in there because the game state is extremely simple at this point on his end. And so I just attack over it with Azure Eyes, and then I attack him for 25, 3k, and 600 off of Stone, White Spirit, and Blue Eyes. So then I actually make a mistake. I go into the extra deck, and I'm fully intending to summon another Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, but I accidentally click the Azure Eyes. I'm kind of in a rush because I've got some things I needed to do after I filmed this game. Some things that I needed to just handle. And so I accidentally make Azure Eyes. And so that actually opens him up to adding back Erebus, which could actually be a potential problem if he draws something like Idea or something. And then here's another mistake, and this mistake is strictly because I didn't understand what DevPro's ordering system was. I thought that the higher number meant that it was lower in the graveyard, but it actually means it's higher up. So I actually banished the Ancient Whitestone that I actually ended up banishing the Ancient Whitestone that had triggered its effect this turn by being synchroed with. And so I'm just like, this is terrible. But I end up maxing his Prime that he uses in response to me adding a card back, and that actually draws me a Maiden. So I use Maiden, and I activate the field spell targeting Maiden, and this allows me to special summon a Blue Eyes out of my deck, and then send another Blue Eyes from my deck to grave, which is pretty neat, pretty alright. In hindsight, I could have probably just gotten away with using the one out of my hand, and in fact, I could have gotten away with using the one out of my hand, but I didn't understand what the play line I wanted to go for here was. But I knew for a fact I didn't want to leave his Prime up until his turn, because of him potentially drawing something to like put another body on the board, like E-Telly or something, and then being able to summon Erebus. So I make Galaxy Eyes Prime Photon Dragon, upgrade it into full armor, pop his Prime Monarch, and then in order to make the Ancient Whitestone live again, I overlay into a Dark Matter. And this is why I say I could have discarded the Blue Eyes out of my hand. I have the Whitestone in my deck still, so I could have sent it and added the Blue Eyes in my deck that was sent off the field spell, and it would have been the same result, but I wouldn't have had to send one of the White Spirit Dragons from my deck to grave. But I send an Ancient Whitestone, I send, I think, Dragoni Corseska, and then one of the two White Spirit Dragons that was left in my deck to the grave, thus triggering Dark Matter. He has to banish 3 cards out of his deck. I confirm what they are, just to see what it was, and then in the end phase, my newly dumped Ancient Whitestone triggers summoning my last White Spirit Dragon out of the deck. I have a Twin Twister down in case he draws something like Domain. I'll be able to get rid of it, and then he just draws and reveals that he has Return of the Monarchs and passes. He doesn't have any more Monarch spells and traps in the grave. That's another reason why I popped the Prime Monarch. And then I just, next turn, I have double Azure, I have all these things, and I just attack him for game. So that is all for these Monarch games. Let me know what you guys think about the deck in the comments down below of the Blue Eyes deck that I'm playing in this specific video. As you can see, it's back on the screen again. It's a little bit more streamlined than the previous deck I played with, but it's still works around a lot of gimmicky interactions with like Maiden and the field spell. I've got a couple of decks that people have sent me to my Facebook fan page that I'll be trying out in future videos as well, but as far as that goes, that is it for this video. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to all the nonsense you usually do. Links are in the description to my stuff if you want to check that out. If you like stuff, go look at stuff. If you want to support me, clicking ads on my videos and disabling ad block when you view my videos is more than sufficient. I cannot express how much it helps me out, nor how much it would be appreciated by myself if you could take the time out of your day to do that sort of thing for me, because it just helps motivate me to continue making content, and, you know, the more motivation I have, the more content you will see, and it basically just benefits us both. If you want to keep seeing content from me, if you enjoy my content, and I keep getting something out of making content, then it's going to continue to be produced for the indefinite future. But other than that, that is all for this video. Thank you all for watching again, and as always, guys, take care.